Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's TeamSense webinar, HR Hot Topic, Open Enrollment is Upon Us. My name is Justin Sears. I'm Chief Marketing Officer at TeamSense. I'm really excited to have you here with us today and to talk about how TeamSense is helping teams in manufacturing and logistics enable open enrollment with their hourly workers. First, a little bit about TeamSense. If you're not familiar with us, we automate the call-off process. So when folks can't come to work, they use TeamSense to let their HR teams know that they won't be there. And they do that using text. And that is very important for hourly workers in industries like manufacturing and logistics, because they don't typically use a company email or download apps, company apps to their phone. And so this opens up a chain of communication between hourly workers and the HR teams that support them. So that digital connection you see on the right really opens up a lot of avenues for communication engagement that weren't there before. And why is that important? Well, I'm talking to lots of HR leaders. I myself have never been an HR leader, but I've enrolled for benefits too many times to count now. And so I know from working with HR partners at other companies that this is an exciting time of the year, but also a stressful time of year. And so just to find some reasons that this might be a stressful time for HR leaders, looked at this Forbes article. There's 19 things listed here that need to be done in a relatively short period of time. And I think this article was written without the constraint of employees not having easy access to company email or apps. This article was assuming an open digital chain of communication, which doesn't exist in the same way for a lot of the companies that TeamSense serves. So what does the world look like for those folks? Well, things here that you see in red are things that are challenging to do. So for manufacturing plants and logistics warehouses and the HR teams that support the employees in those places, this is even more stressful of a time period. This is because, as I mentioned before, there's a limited or no use of company emails. Employees might have company emails, but they don't look at them very often, or they might not even have them. There's resistance to downloading apps from the company. Phone numbers change very frequently in this cohort of employees, and so it's really challenging for HR teams, even if they are able to communicate via phone. A large number of those phone numbers change, and then that communication link is essentially broken for the HR teams that support those employees. And then if you're working about getting the information about open enrollment out to your team in face-to-face meetings like tool talks or town hall meetings, just the scheduling there is challenging. Many shifts, many sites, and you have to show up and have the same information delivered consistently many different times during this period. So the items that I highlighted here in red are things that are particularly challenging. We know this from talking with our customers, particularly challenging in manufacturing plants and logistics warehouses. I'm just going to zoom in on 4 of them and give you some examples about why that's challenging in a specific context. So the Forbes article says launching a proactive communication strategy, and they say HR leaders must rely on data and insights to best understand what matters most to their people. What we hear from working with HR teams at some of the country's largest manufacturing and logistics organizations is that data is often scattered or incomplete. And so even if you want to rely on data and insights from that data to understand what matters most to their people, it's a lot like wandering around in the dark for many of these HR teams, because the data just doesn't exist, or it isn't at their fingertips. Number 2, anticipating the needs of new employees. And look at the things that the article lists here: FAQ sheets, pictographs, hosting benefit fire chats, a benefit dashboard. So some of these things are in person, which are easy for HR teams in this setting to deliver, but some of them are digital. And again, if your employees don't have an easy way, either during work hours or even after they leave the plant, to see these digital assets, it's not much of a help for them as they're coming in and learning a new system as new employees. Number three, taking time to explain all benefits available. Now, we know that in today's modern world, we explain things two ways. We explain things face to face, but now, and especially after COVID, we spend a lot of time explaining things digitally to people, which means you need a digital connection to do that explaining. So when the article says HR needs to take time to explain the benefits enrollment process thoroughly, that is a multi-touch communication, and you can't do it all in one 1 hour town hall meeting. There are always follow-up questions, and there are always one-on-one times that you need to schedule. And so that brings me to my fourth one, engaging with employees through multiple platforms. The communication plan should include multiple channels, such as emails. I mentioned that that's not really in existence for many of the customers that we work with. Intranet announcements, that means that they have an intranet and it's accessible to hourly workers. Posters, of course, are there on the wall in the plant. Webinars, in-person meetings. In-person meetings, scheduling those with folks that are not 100% digitally connected, that can be challenging as well. So you get the idea. For organizations and HR teams in these manufacturing and logistics sites, they might be supporting hundreds of employees or thousands of employees, and they don't have a key digital communication thread. So how does TeamSense come in and help fill the gap and connect the hourly workers to the HR teams that support them? And this is an image to dramatize the headache that, you have team members, HR partners trying to get together. Everybody wants to exchange information, but it leads to this type of frustration. And so we have just published a ebook, and it's called The Manufacturer's Playbook for Open Enrollment Communications. Now, I've been saying manufacturing and logistics. It applies to both of those settings. And I'm going to talk briefly about some of the things in this ebook. I do encourage you to download it because it's a great resource with very tangible examples of things you can do and things that we've seen at TeamSense. But I'm going to break my comments today up into before open enrollment, during open enrollment, and after open enrollment. Just briefly, and I'll go into these in depth. Before open enrollment, you can update employee contact information. During open enrollment, you can leverage text messaging for more frequent communication. You can capture and consolidate FAQs ahead of time. You communicate in more than one language. This is very important in some factory settings where 2, 3, sometimes 4 languages are spoken on the floor. You can make information easily accessible. And then after open enrollment, you can follow up and get feedback and get ready for next year. So let me go into more depth in each one of these areas. I'll pause just for a second and remind everybody that we will have Q&A at the end of this. So please send your questions in. Shannon on our team is going to be watching those questions, and we'll get to those at the end. So want to make this as interactive as possible. If you have any questions, please send them in the Zoom chat. Okay, so let's get going. Before open enrollment. Now, as I mentioned, open enrollment, and as you all know, open enrollment is about communication, and you need a contact information to make that communication possible. So at TeamSense, we start a lot of our engagements with our customers with call off. And this is because most employees call off from work at least once per month. And what TeamSense does, and you can see this in the image on the left, is we confirm phone number and keep your employee directory up to date. So as you can see in the example on the left, somebody texts in from a phone that TeamSense doesn't recognize. And I should take a step back. Each site that is supported by TeamSense will have a dedicated phone number. You provide that phone number to employees at that site, and that's their point of communication. Again, entirely text-based, no app to download, but the employees know that this is their single point of communication. They can come in through that phone number, and the HR teams can support them in a variety of ways, which I'll be talking about. But the first way they tend to support them is with call off. And if I text into that number from a phone that TeamSense doesn't recognize, it comes back and says, hey, like to help you out. Don't recognize your phone number. And so there are ways such as employee ID, and this is configurable by TeamSense client. So you can tell us the way that you verify that this is an employee working at your site. What happens? They put in their employee ID, they go through that workflow, they tell us why they can't come in, tell you why they can't come in. And because we then have a number, we can map it back to that employee ID or whatever that identifier is that they provide in that form. And this is very important because on the right-hand side of this slide, you see that 24% of manufacturing hourly workforces change their phone number every 6 months. How do we know this? We're using our own data at TeamSense. We're supporting so many of these companies. We've got enough data to know that this happens. About a quarter of hourly workers change their number every 6 months. If you don't have that live connection with that workforce, you're going to be in a world where it's getting harder and harder and harder to keep in touch with your hourly employees, at least through their phone. And that is the primary kind of outbound method that most manufacturers and logistic shops have to keep in touch with their hourly workers. Now you see some logos here on the bottom of the slide. You're probably thinking, okay, I have an HRIS system already. That's where I keep phone numbers. We have turnkey integrations with Workday and Ceridian, and we will have those turnkey integrations with ADP and UKG by end of year. If you're working with an HRI system that's not one of these four, we've already integrated with it. We will integrate that, major HRIS system will integrate with that for you. It's just not turnkey just yet, but we are adding more turnkey integrations to the major HRIS systems. Okay, so we've just started with before open enrollment, how you keep employee contact information up to date. Now let's go into actual open enrollment where you all are living right now. First, you want to leverage text messaging. Now, this is what I said at opening. We're getting around a big blocker for a lot of teams that support hourly workers: no email, no app. And so, as I mentioned, there's a dedicated phone number per site. Employees are trained and enabled to communicate via that phone number. And you can see in this example, they might have a question about, or you might want to communicate out something about your open enrollment process. Don't forget to sign up for benefits, etc. You can send this message instantaneously to, in this example, 687 people. You can also send specific messages to different departments or teams within a site. So you get to decide who you want to communicate with, but you can go to everybody all at once and send out reminders. Now, talking with some of our customers, I know that this is an alternative to what happens now, showing up at town halls, making sure everyone's there, putting up posters in break rooms. This is immediate and repeatable, so you can continue to keep your teams up to date. And you see the benefit of this as from one of our customers at Precision Planting. Elisa Reed told us, our employees won't download an app to their phone, so TeamSense is a great solution for us. TeamSense is easy to use even for less tech-savvy employees. Everyone gets it. Everyone can text. So take a second. If you're an HR member of the HR team, think about all the ways that you right now are trying to get in touch with people and give them the vital information they need to enroll in benefits. And think about the time that you spend doing that. What would it mean if you could, anytime you had an update, anytime you wanted to let people know about coming to a town hall, what would it mean if you could communicate to everybody all at once to their devices? You would have a lot more ability to communicate with your team. Next, you can capture and consolidate FAQs ahead of time. I talk to HR leaders, and this is a time when they spend a lot of time of year, I should say. They spend a lot of time answering emails, listening to voicemails. And am I right? A lot of those questions are the same. Hey, where do I find the information? When does open enrollment close? Those type of questions that come in over and over and over again. TeamSense is a great way to automate those repeated type of questions or answers that you need to give. And so as you already know what questions those are, you can do proactive messaging out about FAQs that you know are coming in. You can head those off at the pass, so to speak, and that will help engage with your employees proactively rather than having to answer the same question 10,000 times. Now, those questions will change during certain parts of the open enrollment period. They'll change year to year, but with TeamSense, you get to keep up with that, and you can add new notifications in there about certain questions as they come in, because those questions might change over time. Also, you need to be able to communicate in more than one language. And this is one of the features in TeamSense we're very proud of. We support many languages spoken in factories, and you don't need to have language experts on team to translate these things in real time. You put the message in there, the content you want, and then you can deliver that information in language. And you can also set up which preferred language each of your team members prefers to get that information in. That opens up a lot of doors. It also helps with employee engagement. Employees really love knowing that you're taking the time and effort to communicate them in a language that they understand best. And you can see that in the lower right here, quote from Nate at Magna. We love TeamSense's language translation capability. Not only is it valuable from a communication and productivity standpoint, but it also gives employees an experience where they feel welcome, comfortable, and personally accommodated for. And that experience point is really a big part of the reason that TeamSense exists. Sheila Stafford, our CEO and founder, and Allison Teagarden, who also founded the company, they were looking for a way to make this experience initially of call off, but then moving into this, a lot of these communication threads I'm talking about, an experience that delivers information to people how they want to receive it. And that is really the benefit behind Nate's quote here on the lower right. Okay, I'll pause again and remind everybody to keep sending in questions. I think they're coming in. Here's another one that's great. So during open enrollment, you want to make information easily accessible. And you saw before in the Forbes article, the reference to FAQs. TeamSense supports that also. We talk about that as our employee portal. So think about the types of communications you do for open enrollment. You sometimes have employees coming to you with questions. Sometimes you want to push out communications to your employees about information you feel that they need to know. There's also an asynchronous way that employees like to engage with information. They might have received one of those communication that you pushed out through TeamSense, and it sparked an idea for them, but they're not ready at that point in time to engage with the information. Hours pass, a couple of days pass, and they say, I want to find out more about that now. And this is a great way to cache all the information that you want them, especially the longer documented forms of information. So what's the policy on HR enrollment? What are the plans that employees have to choose between? All that you can load to the portal. And this example, for example, this employee would just text to that dedicated TeamSense number portal, and they're automatically given the portal with all the self-serve information that they might want. This is great from an employee perspective. It's also great for the HR team, because what that does is it's heading off a lot of the emails or calls that you might get. Some of those calls or visits you might want, but not the ones that are saying, hey, where's the benefits guide? Those type of downloadable, repeatable things, you just put them in the portal, and then you can point people to that portal as a way to get the information as and when they want to look at it. I went the wrong way. Now let's go to after open enrollment. So you've gotten through a very busy time of year. If you're using TeamSense, you've made that experience a lot easier for folks to engage with you and as the HR team. And you feel like it went much more smoothly this time because you had a way to communicate with people. You could do that in real time or asynchronously, however people preferred. But you always learn something from an open enrollment process. No matter how well you plan ahead of time, there's always things you think, oh, we should have done this or we should have done that. And most importantly, you want to hear that information from your team, from your employees. So this is a great example of a survey that you can run through through TeamSense to get feedback. And because you're delivering it to people's phone via text, you can make this very simple. In this example, just answering one question, how easy was the open enrollment process? They can say big thumbs down, big thumb or small thumbs up, big thumbs up. And then there's a text box there. What would you improve for next year? We were just talking with one of our customers on a webinar last week or a couple weeks ago, and his name's Tim. And Tim told us that it's that text box that provides a lot of very interesting insight because the structured data is great. And in many cases, you don't have that structured feedback on how the open enrollment process went. If you can get that from 800 people in a few minutes at the end of your process, you're in a much better place than most HR teams are. But it's those text-based, hey, wouldn't it be great if you could do this? The type of things that you want people to tell you more about, that's where a lot of the innovation comes. And so you can provide that as well. Now, this is a very easy form. You could ask 3-4 questions. Everything is very easy to configure. And we work with the HR teams that we support to get these surveys right. You can ask surveys about a lot of things. This is an example about open enrollment, but we have customers asking in survey, hey, for music on the shop floor, would you like to hear this band or that group? And actually, they're pushing out surveys about what type of music they like to listen to. The point is that the effort to get that information in a structured format is so much easier with TeamSense than the way most folks are doing it, that it opens up a lot more questions that you can ask of the team, and that really improves engagement. We see that over and over again with our customers. Okay, so I've been through the high level, and I think we have some questions coming in. We'll get to those in a second. But if what you've heard about open enrollment or any of the examples I've given is interesting, please get in touch with us. We love engaging with prospects and customers. If you've heard something that was interesting you want to learn more about, you can get in touch with us. This way we will get back to you. And we just like hearing feedback. Now, we're going to open up the questions that have come in a second, but a lot of times those questions, you remember them after the webinar is over. So remember this email, webinars@teamsense.com. And so now we are at the Q&A point. And Shannon, are you with me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent.
What are the questions?
We do have a few questions that came in. So the first one, you mentioned communicating FAQs and automation. Can we schedule communication in line with key dates?
That is a great question. And the answer is happily yes. And you can schedule them at a particular time. You can also batch them. So if you have 3 shifts in your plant, for example, and you know who's going to be showing up for each shift, if someone's going to be showing up at 8 a.m. and someone else is going to be showing up at 2 p.m., well, you want that information going out to the first shift just before 8 so they have time to look at it. And you want to batch the one for the 2 p.m. Differently. So you can schedule it. You can also bundle it and group it. And then you can also set up repeated messages if you want that as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, next one. Tell us about how easy this is for our team. You talked about making open enrollment easy for the employee, but is this a difficult process to get portals set up for our HR team? Do they need to be advanced in using tech?
Oh, that is a great question. And if you've heard the term low code, that's what TeamSense is all about. This is a low code platform. So I've learned long ago not to give a live demo on a webinar like this, but get in touch with us. We'd love to show you a demo about this. In my words today, I was focusing, I think, a lot more on the employee experience, but I did mention data. And what we would love to show you, if you're on an HR team, all of those communications and your employees' response to those communications, things like policy acknowledgments, you can set up a survey to send everybody to for them to acknowledge that they've read a certain policy. All of that is automatically ingested into TeamSense, and then you get to look at it from a dashboard perspective. So you can see, for example, of your 800 employees, how many have acknowledged the policy, and then you know who you need to talk to. On the call off side, you can also see, this is a very interesting use of TeamSense. You can find out when people are tending to call off, and you can do some root cause analysis of why people are calling off. A funny story, one of our customers in the Great Lakes region noticed that they were having a lot of no call, no shows or late arrivals on Tuesday, but not every Tuesday. And they were trying to figure out why that was spiking. And they looked into the data and figured out that if the Packers were playing a Monday Night Football game, it really hurt attendance because folks were having a good time the night before and decided not to come in the next day. So that's kind of a fun example, but there are other examples where you can identify root causes for some of the attendance and absenteeism challenges and address them with policy. Another good example, Shannon, is sometimes they noticed that there were late arrivals, and one of our customers figured out that they could set up and make it easy to schedule carpools with TeamSense. And they had already been thinking about doing a carpool rideshare program for that plant. But once they saw the data and they could recognize when people started to be late, they had more information and more context to roll that program out. And they could see the benefit of the program after the fact. They saw something in the data, they did something about it, and then they could see the improvement on the back end in terms of reduction of late arrival at that plant. Any other
Excellent. All
questions?
right. We've got two more, Justin, that have come through. Please feel free, if you have any last minute questions, to drop them in the
These
Q&A.
are
I am
these are great
monitoring it.
questions. Keep them coming. This is fantastic.
So the next question, what other types of paperwork or forms do team members submit using TeamSense?
That's a great question, and it's a long list. So I'm gonna let me stop sharing for 1 second and go to I'm breaking the cardinal rule. I'm going to a live web page here. Let me show you where you would find that on TeamSense. And then I'll share again. One moment. I want to give a complete answer to that question. So I'm going to go to our website to make sure that I don't miss any of the examples. Okay. Here we are. So pointing you to our website, here's just some of the forms and surveys that our customers have used. So pulse surveys. We hear from customers, some of our customers have really great engagement surveys that they developed over many years, but they just deliver those surveys, say, one time a year. And that data ages because it's only as good as how recent the information was captured. And so pulse surveys, again, making it easier to reach out to your customers and just check in with them. You go from doing it once a year as a big effort, which you probably still want to do, but what if you did kind of smaller versions of that every quarter, maybe even every month, to find out how people are doing? You can also look at overtime availability. I mentioned new policy acknowledgement. Some of our customers are doing safety incident reports. If something happens on the floor, they want to report. maintenance requests, marking yourself safe, carpool sign up I mentioned. It's impossible for us to put all of the items on this list because there are so many of them. But that just gives you some example of what we see.
Excellent. We have another one that came in. So, open enrollment conversations are at times situational and individualized. They require talking with HR specifically. Are you suggesting that these conversations should be fully self-service and automated, or is that even realistic?
Oh, that is such a great question. And that comes into the point I made before about automating the repeatable. So if you're getting a million questions about, hey, when is open enrollment period end, you're spending time answering those questions. TeamSense would take that away so you can answer it once for everybody and you can let people look that information up on their own. And that frees up your HR team's time for what really matters, which is the questions that you can't put in a portal or you can't answer for everybody in the same way. Those are questions about somebody's specific condition, family, circumstances. That's where you want to be 100% available to your team members. And because you're doing all the other things, we hear this from the HR teams that we support, because you're doing all the other things, you can't get to those as many of those deep in-depth conversations as you want. And so what the way we see that is, no, you're not going to be able to put everything up in a portal that will answer everybody's individual questions. You put the things there that free you and your team up to have those important conversations at the pace that you want to have them and that your employees will appreciate.
Okay. And the final question I have is how much, this goes right into what you were just talking about, Justin. How much time do you think customers can save using TeamSense for either this process or call off?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mentioned, Shannon, and to the attendees that we typically start with the call off process. And we were visiting with a customer a few weeks ago, and they figured that conservatively just getting in early in the morning, listening to voicemails from people that weren't going to be in, reading emails, communicating with supervisors about who was going to be in and who wasn't. They conservatively estimated that it was 10 to 12 HR people hours a week. So it was 2 people working on it about an hour a day. So 10 to 12 hours just to automate the call off process. Now, the reason that it's challenging for us to add up all the time saved is how many use cases did I just mention? Just on the survey side. The benefit of TeamSense is you subscribe to a platform for this communication, and you can use it to communicate about a lot of things. One of those things might save you an hour a week. One of those things might save you 20 hours a week. But it is about, and it all adds up, but it is about automating the things that you and your employees that you support would prefer to have automated so that you clear up the space to focus on the things that shouldn't be automated. So I would say call off about 10 hours a week is a pretty fair estimate. Now that was at a site with 1,000 employees. So you can factor it up or down depending on how large your site is. But that's just the first step. And so, I think it's a pretty conservative estimate would say the repeatable quote unquote busy work that HR teams need to do for a plant or a warehouse of any size, you're probably looking at 10 hours a week that you can shift to higher value, kind of more personal activities that will help with employee engagement.
All right, Justin, we have one more that came in last minute.
They keep coming. Great. All right.
This one is, do we get dedicated support in this process and setting up our open enrollment? Can our HR team count on having someone to help us get portal set up and set up all the automations?
Certainly. we put customer care at the top of our priority list, because we understand that this is it is a change to existing process, but we've done everything in the product and with our teams to minimize the impact of that change. So I talked about on the product side, text-based. Everybody knows how to use text. You don't have to teach people how to do new things. Where we would spend time with the HR team is understanding your policies and mapping TeamSense to those policies. But again, because we're a low-code platform, you're not talking about getting heavy IT involvement. We would work with you as part of the onboarding process to understand what you want those forms to ask, what systems the answers need to map to, how you want to analyze the response to all the communication that you're enabling through TeamSense. And then we don't just finish once you're up and running and say, well, we'll see you in a year. We have a dedicated customer success organization that has worked with so many different customers in many different formats. So a lot of times what we get excited about is we're able to provide value added knowledge into how to do this the best way. And we really get excited to pass that knowledge along to new customers as they come on, so that we can make those HR teams more successful at rolling this out. And because it's text-based and because we start with that call-off process, we find that we get, 95, 96% adoption from hourly workers. There are always folks that, the last 4 or 5% that don't want to text. And I should mention that we can also support email and even voice in the same way, so that the information's coming in that structured way. So it's not that, hey, if you want to use email for those last 4%, you can't do that. You can do that. But what we find in practice is that once people have texted and seen how easy that is, easily 95% of the folks on the floor are going to want to do that. And that means that you and your HR team have a lot of information about the experience that you're creating and supporting for your employees.
All right, excellent, Justin. That's all. So tell us one more time how we can get in touch if we have more questions.
Let me go back here. Please send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. webinars@teamsense.com. And I'll also say this is easy to find on our website. If you're convinced and you want to learn more, please go. You'll see schedule a demo or book a demo button in the upper right of our website. If you want to just skip through the email exchange and go right to scheduling a demo, you can do that. And that's where one of our experts will show you an actual example of using the product to answer questions that are your questions, not general questions from anybody. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the time you all took and all the great questions that came in. We will have a webinar at this time next week. So keep your eyes open. We're still finalizing the details, but Tuesday next week, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. And we'd love for you to join again next week if you're able. Really appreciate the time. Thank you so much, Shannon. Have a great day, y'all.